Okay, good morning everybody, or good afternoon I should say. Thank you for coming. I'm here to talk about a Queen Mary Academy project that is about the transition of non-traditional students to university, particularly BTEC students. You may have heard of the BTEC, it's on the review at the moment. These are our typical Queen Mary kind of student. You can see state schools, minorities and all the rest of it. But more than any other Russell group, we also take BTEC students, and they have a very different educational background or experience to the typical student, I guess, that we assume is the university student. Queen Mary has kind of made this statement that it's going to be the sort of university, the Russell group of mobility and inclusion. And the Office of Students has obviously said that that now needs to be about equity as much as equality. So not simply getting people who traditionally haven't been to university into the university, but then treating them equitably, so that these little mites in 10 or 15 years, when I'm no longer here and the grey is even greyer, are actually treated like an A-level student. And often our students are not. They're minorities, they're poor, they're from BTEC backgrounds and so on. So here is the A-level student, the sort of typical student the university professor like myself expects to meet. My children are like this, and I myself, I guess, was like that. And they're trained in sort of abstract thought, written essays, conceptual work. This is the A-level in business. And you can see it talks about critical thinking, ethical dilemmas, synoptic learning, metacognition, all the things that we would expect. And this is Pearson, and they also run the BTEC. But their BTEC is very different. Their BTEC is about the practical. It's about the non-abstract. There's very little, if any, major kind of written work. Most of it is guided learning in a classroom or some other form of that. And it's employer-led, grounding in the latest industry developments. It's not about abstract conceptual kind of thinking. It's assessed, so on, and taught through group work, through trying to practical skills, through presentation. It's not about academic reading and writing. So these students come to us with a very different background to the A-level student that we also teach. They learn things like managing an event rather than, say, English literature. So there's a gap. We noticed that SBM, the School of Business and Management, that there's a gap between the BTEC students, attachment to the university, dropping out, attainment, alienation, and so on, is worse than in comparison with the A-level student. And of course, as a school, we like to think of ourselves as thinking about big problems. Not so much how does a business internationalize, which would be a BTEC question, but whether or not the internationalizing of a business, globalization, is a good thing, or does it create environmental change, materials depletion, and all of those things. So they have a different way of learning, the BTEC student. It's compounded to some extent by their GCSE results. Their GCSE results are often, in some senses quite poor. Our students wouldn't be accepted by King's with these GCSEs, right? So they go into business, they go into the BTEC in business and management, and that's the only subject they do after 16. So having done reasonably poorly in English and maths, for example, they then drop it at 16 and never get reacquainted with it. And in their BTEC in business and management, they don't think conceptually, or they don't do big written kind of exercises. So I would suggest that they get a kind of what we might consider training rather than learning. And that they arrive to us with a kind of sense of training, with a, what is the solution to this problem? How do we internationalize a business? There are 5 easy routes to that. We, of course, as academics, like to think of the university as this transformational experience, right? The academic hubris. That the university is, in some sense, about developing the person and helping them to engage with the world. Our students, of course, many of them are thinking, no, I want a job, give me some answers and give me some solutions. So there's a gap between what they expect and what we deliver. And we've tried to bridge that gap through our Step Ahead program. This year, I'm introducing an extra hour for reading and writing, so my workshop goes from 2 to 3 hours to try and help bridge that gap. But the gap is very obvious when I'm in the classroom. The BTEC classroom is small, 15 to 20 students, and they're often set problems. Find out what Westfield shopping centre, the old one, was like and compare it to the new, and tell me about the retail brands that are important. So they're assessed through things like summaries, description, right and wrong answers, sort of formulaic work that's often submitted in a draft form and then commented on, and then the real thing is submitted and graded, and the BTEC result kind of emerges. So there's a training and a sort of learning mismatch, I think, when they come to us. And that, I was going to do focus groups with the students as well as go into the classes. Nobody showed up for the focus groups. They didn't even respond to the emails, even though I had had good interaction with them. So I think they're alienated very early because we expect them to do things they're not equipped to do. And that's sort of about staff-student ratios, but our ratios are the same as King's. The difference is King's don't take BTEC students, or they take BTEC students that have a combination with A-levels. So if we're to achieve our equity of opportunity, I think as a school and as a college, Queen Mary has a lot of work to do to bridge that gap between the BTEC in September and what we require by December. And we're not doing that at the moment. Thank you. That was a race, wasn't it?